listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Governor Ron DeSantis ordered lawmakers into a special session this week, primarily to carry out the Trump administration's illegal immigration agenda. The Florida legislature met, pushed back against the governor, and quickly gavelled out of it. Now, lawmakers are in the middle of their own special session, setting their own agenda, and moving forward with their own plans on immigration reform. Central Florida Public Media reporter Rick Brunson is following the special session happening now. Thank you for being here in studio with us, Rick.
Thanks for having me, Sharon.
Can you briefly remind us of what happened with the session called by the governor and what we're actually seeing play out with state lawmakers this week?
Yeah, so Governor DeSantis called lawmakers into a special session. They met yesterday. They gavelled in Tallahassee at 10:30. But he called them wanting them to deal with a whole host of issues and proposals that he had, from combating illegal immigration to revising condo regulations to changing how citizen initiatives can end up on ballots. But that quickly and dramatically got all swept away as soon as House Speaker Daniel Perez of Miami pounded the gavel, calling the session to order. He immediately criticized the governor for calling the special session in the first place and said the legislature would be asserting its own independence and going into its own special session to handle the issue of illegal immigration on its own terms. So after 20 minutes of criticizing DeSantis, he adjourned the session and then turned right around and gavelled in to what he then called Special Session B. It was a pretty stunning moment when you consider the legislature has up to this point given the governor pretty much whatever he's asked for and what he's wanted.
Yeah, they certainly have. So this is definitely a change in tone here. So we've seen these Republican legislative leaders cut the number of days of the special session from 5 days to 3, and they're primarily focusing their debate on this single bill. Rick, can you just tell us, what is this bill? What's it going to do?
So immediately when lawmakers went into that special session B, a bill was distributed to them right away by the leadership that they clearly had lined up and ready to go. So what they're focusing on passing now is called the Tackling and Reforming Unlawful Migration Policy Act. And if you do the acronym of the bill, Trump, it's called the Trump Act, and that's on purpose. When announcing the bill in a press release to the media, House Speaker Perez and Senate President Ben Albritton mentioned Trump's name at least 15 times. So this legislation is specifically tailored and designed to be in lockstep with President Trump's policies and make sure that Florida executes his executive orders on combating illegal immigration. Specifically, the bill, if it becomes law, would establish a new state agency, the Office of Immigration Enforcement, and would empower the state's agriculture commissioner, Wilton Simpson, to be the state's new chief immigration officer, to coordinate with federal efforts to curb illegal immigration and detain and deport people who are in Florida and in the country illegally. So the bill would create a state immigration enforcement council, which would be a board of 7 county sheriffs tasked with providing recommendations to the state and to U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, also called ICE. The bill would cost, and here's the hefty price tag, over $500 million in taxpayer money to implement. And what that would fund, among other things, the big items are hiring a lot of new state and local law enforcement officers to assist federal authorities. That's the biggest chunk of the bill, about $375 million. Pay for new beds and to lease facilities to house immigrants who are detained and process them for deportation. The bill would also eliminate in-state tuition for about 6,000 students who are currently studying at Florida colleges and universities who are undocumented. The legislation by name is House Bill 1B, and it was put forward by Representative Lawrence McClure, a Republican from Dover. And then there's a companion bill in the Senate, Senate Bill 2B, which is co-sponsored by Republican Senators Joe Gruters of Sarasota and Senator Randy Fine of Melbourne here in Central Florida.
I'm wondering, Rick, as you're listening to the debates happening in these committee meetings, are there any arguments that are really standing out to you?
Well, you have to remember that Republicans have a supermajority in the legislature. So even as Democrats, such as Anna Eskamani, who represents Orlando, are passionately voicing their objections and trying to amend this bill, it's looking like it's basically going to be pushed through pretty quickly by tomorrow. But there has been very emotional debate in the committees as they hash out this bill. And what has struck me in observing the debate in the House committee has been the contention that has emerged over the term dreamers and what that means, and also how lawmakers are leveraging the meaning of faith and conscience in the debate over this bill. In the House committee that I observed, Democrats tried to amend the bill so that the 6,000 undocumented students in Florida who have in-state tuition, who are often referred to as dreamers, would be allowed to keep it. That amendment was voted down along party lines. But the debate over it was very striking. Representative Michelle Rayner of St. Petersburg, who's a Democrat and also a lawyer, declared at one point, and I'm quoting here, "My God, where's the humanity? There's the law, but there's also the humanity," unquote. And then she was quoting the book of Hebrews in the New Testament about the Bible's charge to Christians to welcome strangers. And then her fellow Democrat, Christine Hunchovsky of Parkland, said this, quote, "The dreamers who are here through no fault of their own, they are not the problem, and we shouldn't be making them the problem. They're not our immigration problem. They're not making our communities less safe," unquote. During the public comment section, Reverend Russell Meyer, who's the executive director of the Florida Council of Churches, attempted to really appeal to lawmakers' consciences. And he said, quote, "Florida churches have a long history of welcoming strangers. It's biblical," unquote. But on the other side, Representative Chase Tremont, who's a Republican of Port Orange and is also a pastor, gave a counterargument, citing 3 instances in recent years where Florida residents were killed by people who were in the state illegally. And he made the point that the children of these murder victims were also dreamers who saw their dreams dashed after losing a parent. And so at the end of all of this debate, Representative McClure, who's the bill sponsor in the House, acknowledged the heartbreak that DACA students face. But he said he's more concerned about being fair to out-of-state students who are going to college in Florida who are citizens of the United States and they're paying higher tuition. He said doing away with in-state tuition for undocumented students is about eliminating incentives for people to come to the United States and Florida illegally. In his words, and he got the last word in the debate, quote, "Remove the incentives that attract the parents who bring the children. If you remove the incentive, you do away with the heartbreak," unquote. And with that, the House committee voted 24-6 along party lines to approve the bill and move it forward for a general vote. The Senate committees are discussing and debating the bill this afternoon, and a general vote could come later today at the earliest and at least by tomorrow, which is the day that the session is scheduled to be wrapped up.
A lot to go through. Central Florida Public Media's Rick Brunson is covering developments from this special session happening this week in Tallahassee. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you for having me.
Central Florida businesses are bracing for the impact of President Trump's funding freeze on federal loans and grants effective tonight. Next, here on Engage, hear how supporters of small businesses in our community are taking action now. This is Engage on Central Florida Public Media. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Ahead on this program, the 2025 Zora Festival kicks off this week, commemorating the poetry and activism of Zora Neale Hurston.
Anyone who has been exposed to post-secondary education, and in fact, even in international baccalaureate studies and advanced applications, advanced studies, AP, they have read Zora Neale Hurston's Her Eyes Are Watching God.
N.Y. Nathiri joins us to talk about Hurston's contributions and the festival's events. First, though, this week, President Donald Trump expanded Homeland Security's ability to deport any immigrant who has been here less than 2 years. He also revoked an order that previously banned ICE from conducting deportations at schools, religious buildings, and hospitals and other health care centers. ICE has conducted hundreds of raids in many cities around the country. Arrests were made in South Florida communities on Monday. Today on Engage, we asked Jared Nordland to join us in studio. He's based in Orlando and is the Florida State Director of Unidos US. That's a Hispanic civil rights organization. They work to remove economic, political, or cultural barriers to improve the quality of life for all Latinos to live out their own version of the American dream. We asked Nordland if he's heard of any reports of deportation operations in Central Florida.
I haven't heard any details of them actually being on the ground yet. I think we're all anticipating that being a thing. And I think what's important is making sure everybody knows their rights. If an ICE agent comes to your house, they need to have a warrant signed by a judge. And so if they don't let them in. That's just your constitutional right. And making sure if they do have a warrant, to have them slide under the door and make sure that it's all in order, and then, let them in. But you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to provide anything. You can ask for an attorney before you say anything at all. So just follow your rights. And there are a lot of organizations on the ground here in Orlando that have know your rights trainings on how to protect yourself and how to actually, if something were to happen, where your rights are and how to follow the law.
Jared, you said yet. They're not in Central Florida yet. That makes me think that you are expecting them. What kind of signs do you look for? How do you know when this is happening?
Yeah, I don't know that this time around you're going to be able to see, I think, kind of what's going to happen. I think what's most important is preparing now, like I would say, much like a natural disaster, as we would think about in Florida terms of hurricanes, is prepare now, get your kind of kit ready to go and kind of know when that comes up, what to do. So that way, if something like were to happen, you're not going to be nervous or scared, or you have your plan in place. So I think the biggest thing is to prepare yourself.
Are these the conversations that you're having with the families that you work with now?
Not as directly. We don't work directly with families, but we're working with our affiliate network across the state to help people understand like what their rights are, what's happening, help demystify what's going on, make sure they know their rights. But that's been even before President Trump took office. These are things that our affiliates do all the time.
You have been with Unidos US more than 14 years, correct?
Correct.
I'm wondering if you have ever experienced a climate like what we're seeing now.
No, I think it definitely has become more and more scared for a lot of people out there, which is understandable out there. So I think definitely knowing your rights, and more than anything is make sure that you exercise those rights now, I would say, for sure.
Is there any other information you could offer about what you need to know? I realize that you're not directly working with families, but we have people in the audience who are scared of what to do. What advice would you give our listeners?
One is, if you don't have an immigration attorney, is seek out one, whether it's from a nonprofit, but for sure have an immigration attorney because they can help you kind of walk you through your case. Immigration is a very complex issue, and so every person's situation is different or can be different, and so it's best to seek out a well-respected immigration attorney in your community and have them kind of walk you through what you need to prepare for or what you can do in terms of applying for aid or assistance out there. And then I think just obviously if you see something, say something, help people be aware of what's going on in their community around them and make sure that you've got a plan in place. I mean, I think, knowing your rights, I'm sure we can find places for people to have know your rights training. You'll probably see them pop up a lot more over the next year. And so as you see them, as you hear about them, attend them. If you have questions, it's a great place to get help and see what actually is going on and understand like what your rights are and how to actually make sure that you stay compliant with the law.
So this new Trump administration, we mentioned, lifted the ban of apprehensions in schools and churches. Is there a safe haven?
Well, at the end of the day, ICE still needs to follow the Constitution. So again, if you're at a school, any place out there, ICE still has to have a warrant. They just can't randomly come to a place and just ask for everybody out there. They need to have a signed warrant that has the individual's name they're looking for on there. And if they don't have that, anybody can turn them away. That's your right, especially even for a house. If they don't have a warrant, you don't have to let them in at all. And so if ICE is doing what they should be doing, following the law, they'll have a warrant signed by a judge, and that warrant will have been signed in the past 14 days. And if they don't have that, there's no reason to let them in at all because they're outside the law.
Okay, and you mentioned getting a lawyer involved. What do people without the means to hire a lawyer to help them, what do they do?
There actually are a lot of pro bono lawyers that I think also would help that we could probably connect people with on the ground here. But there's also online helps as well, or nonprofits have ways to kind of help make sure people know what the rights are out there. But a lot of it, can be kind of just going down to your basic rights and knowing we should be doing in a situation where you encounter a person from ICE.
What can we talk to DACA dreamers about? There's a lot of uncertainty here. We're seeing some bills in the legislature now questioning what they will and will not be allowed to do. What do you say to them?
Yeah, I think one is tell your story out there. I think when it comes to who you are, part of this is helping the larger public understand the value that DACA recipients provide to the economy. Even when it comes to undocumented immigrants out there, for the amount of money that taxes that they pay in terms of sales taxes or other taxes that they should be, they're providing for the community and the state. And so telling your story out there, what you contribute out there is a big thing. We saw this during COVID that a lot of people who are migrant workers and on the front lines, they're keeping restaurants open, doing the dishwashing, being on the front lines and keeping the economy going is a big thing that we needed. And we came out of COVID better because of that. And so they should be respected and acknowledged for that commitment.
Let me ask you this. The Trump administration promised mass deportations, and we're seeing that happen. And South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said at a judiciary hearing that it is our belief the only way you'll get control of the border is for deportations to start early. And he goes on to say, if we do not have outflow, the inflow will continue. That line of thinking, that we have to stop this mass influx of immigrants for the safety of America. What is your response to that argument?
Well, I think the first is that we have to acknowledge that our immigration system we have right now is broken. It's been broken for decades, and I think that has to get fixed as well as securing the border. And so I think you can't have one without the other out there. People who have been here for 30 years that have been coming our community, well-respected neighbors out there. We should find a way to actually have a path for citizenship for them. Of course, there are ones that we don't want to have here, and for sure, there's ways to deal with that. But when you look at undocumented immigrants, they're here to just like any other immigrant family from generations ago. They're here to make their own version of the American dream, and they see this place to be able to do that.
And we've talked a bit about the national climate, but we're also seeing our Florida lawmakers in session just this week as you and I are talking. Mm-hmm. What are you watching for in this special session?
Well, one thing is to take a step back on this is that last year our organization conducted 3 polls with Latino voters on what the top issue was, and by far and away inflation, the cost of living, wanting to actually have increase in wages, that was the number one issue out there. And so for us, it's a bit shocking that they seem to have forgotten that since the election. And if I were the governor to call a special session, it would be to address the economy. In Florida, we have a housing crisis, an insurance crisis, a healthcare crisis. We have a lot of crises that have been made worse over the past decade. And to not address those immediately tells me kind of where they're actually at in terms of wanting to help Floridians out. When you have people who are paying, the cost of a mortgage for insurance, they can't keep that going, or they can't pay the food prices right now. The state has an opportunity right now when it comes to taking down federal dollars for Sunbucks program, which would allow families to get $120 per child during the summer to have for food to offset grocery bill prices. The state hasn't done that. They're one of the 13 states that hasn't done that yet. And they would pay $13 million, $14 million for this program set up here in Florida and receive $260 million. So it's a 20-fold return on investment out there. And for the state not to do that as a way to actually show an easy way to help families who are needing help with the groceries, it boggles my mind that how they're prioritizing things out there.
Jared, why do you think that is? Why, given what you just told me, why is the focus so intensely on immigration?
I think they don't have a plan to actually fix the economy. And that's why I think the big concern is for everybody out there is that, we're seeing the price of eggs go up. We've seen the price of housing go up and insurance go up. And, home insurance, auto insurance, we've been seeing this stuff go up for a long time. And so without it coming down, these are also Florida problems. These aren't national problems. And not having a way out there. I mean, we see, how homeowners get kicked off insurance. We had to figure the whole thing out. Those things are real impact people have to deal with and try to figure out how to make their life, livable. And so why the state's not addressing these things out there initially, that's what puzzles us right now is why are they forgetting this stuff?
If there was an undocumented family in the studio with us right now, what do you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people understand that the immigrants who are here working hard, like they deserve to be here. It's more getting them to be on the path of citizenship and figuring that process out. That's what we should be going towards. And so I think, that's what we get people focused on, is that, and that's a reality, hopefully sooner than later. But knowing that there are people who recognize the contributions they're making and want to make their life easier here.
Jared Nordland is based here in Orlando and is the Florida State Director of Unidos US, a Hispanic civil rights organization. The Trump administration is pausing all federal government loans and grants beginning at 5 p.m. today, according to an internal memo. While those cuts will not directly impact programs that provide assistance directly to people, the impact on businesses and people will be felt here. The UCF Business Incubation Program has worked with hundreds of companies throughout Central Florida on development and operational support. Carol Ann Logue is director of the program. She joined Engage this afternoon to discuss what she's telling the Central Florida businesses involved with the UCF incubators as that 5 p.m. deadline looms. The conversation begins with Logue describing the role of UCF's Business Incubation Program.
For 25 years now, the UCF Business Incubation Program, we have been in the business and on the mission of nurturing and supporting early stage companies developing highly innovative solutions to problems in the market. We do that by, once we select a company that aligns with our criteria and the types of things we can help them with, we bring them into our program. They often actually have physical space in one of our 9 facilities that serves as their corporate office, as well as perhaps we have laboratories and other facilities that can help accommodate what they need to do in research and development, product development. But more importantly, we surround them, Sharon, with a whole range of business support services, coaching, advising, education, formal mentoring programs, leadership academy, help with understanding how to manage their finances, connections to attorneys, connections to all sorts of service providers, and working extensively with them on their business strategy, business models, milestones and objectives, and bringing them resources to help them achieve that. It's really all about helping these young businesses be smarter, grow faster, and have a much better chance of surviving because we've helped them build a really strong foundation. And then at the end of the day, they begin to really grow and get traction and, quote, graduate on out of the incubator program into the local community, take their own commercial space, continue to create jobs, higher wage jobs in the community, and really help contribute to the economic vitality of the local community. That's why our primary funding partners are local city and county governments. We are part of their economic development strategy to help diversify and grow the economy here locally in the 5 counties we serve.
Okay, so how much of the work then do you do actually relies on federal funding?
Yeah. The incubator itself, we do not have any federal funding, and that's pretty intentional, actually. The incubator program is very much grassroots funded in terms of our operating budget. However, the hundreds of companies that we have supported and do support, at any given time, at least 40% of them or more are receiving federal grant dollars to fund the research and development work that they're doing. And they're doing that in collaboration with the federal agencies that have identified that there's a real need or a real problem, either for that agency or in the broader industry that they serve. For example, the National Institutes of Health, they fund world-changing research and development to save lives and diagnose and detect diseases and illnesses. And they've identified needs that they put out grant opportunities out there our companies, like many others, go after those. And it is in partnership with these federal agencies through these grants that the companies are achieving their research and development and product development milestones while contributing to the work that the agency's doing and solving real problems in our society.
When we talk about the potential impact of this federal spending pause, you said more than 40% of the businesses that you're working with receive some type of federal funding. I'm wondering, what are you hearing from these small businesses that are looking to, make their place?
Right. Uh, we're really, it's a little early to have heard much from the companies. I think a lot, the small businesses, frankly, were not even aware of this. And we sent out an email to all of our clients this morning about this stoppage on grant and loan distributions and the pause on any new ones, because we have some companies that were waiting to hear about whether or not they'd been selected to be awarded a new grant as well.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing with our companies, I think, much like I guess we did when the pandemic caught us all off guard, for example, and a lot of things came to a screeching halt, or we've all seen times when the government shut down because of continuing resolution and that delayed things. This is some different here because we just don't have a lot of guidance and details on how this is all going to play out or time frame. But what we do constantly with our companies, our clients, and will do in this situation as well, is we will sit down with them. We will help them look at their capital management and their capital strategies and understand from them what do they think the challenges might be or impact might be for them on this. Maybe some have just received a distribution from the grants that they have, and they'll be okay for a while because a lot of these grant payments are on a quarterly basis, for example. So we really don't know the full extent of the impact yet.
As you're reacting in real time and doing this outreach to the companies, trying to inform them in this developing situation, do you have any concerns in the short term that you can share?
What I think that the impact's going to be and what's going to be of concern to us is we have companies that are really new, young companies that have just been notified, for example, that they're going to be awarded a federal research and development grant through a program like the Small Business Innovation Research Program, for example, which so many of our clients utilize. It's probably the most effective federal small business R&D funding program the government's ever run and managed, and it's been around for a long time. And so for those companies, that funding is what's going to enable them to even really get started and begin to move forward in the operations and the work of the company. So there will be some that just have to put it completely on hold. Other companies are not going to be able to hire people that are critical to their continued research and development and product prototyping efforts, for example. So it's that impact on the company. For the incubator program, it's going to mean they may not have the funds to pay their monthly licensing fees to us. We'll work with them on that. It's really more about the delays in the companies being able to do their work. And just overall, this whole initiative and the halting of really critical research and development in so many areas, it puts us at a real disadvantage nationally against our global competitors like China, like Russia, others they're not going to slow down their spending. And we're already playing catch up in a lot of areas, especially in the national security space. And we have a lot of companies that are doing research and development in the defense and national security space, particularly under federal grants.
I realize that I'm peppering you with all these questions, and I appreciate you giving me these answers as we all try to navigate, the impact of this. I'm wondering if there's anything that you would like the public to know or anything you'd like the businesses that rely on you or other outlets like yours to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's just this is another instance of the I don't want to say danger, that's not the right word, but the potential issues you may have to deal with when you're reliant on federal dollars in particular, because things change with every administration. Continuing resolutions happen, government shuts down happens. This has happened, obviously. So there's generally going to be uncertainty when you're dealing with federal funding anyway. So it's just so important in every local community where you have highly innovative, promising companies for the local community to do what they can to support those companies. We have a lot of people in this community, like many other communities around the country, where they have the potential to be angel investors and advisors and mentors to these companies to help them navigate through these challenges. Some of the bigger companies in the community have the much more potential to partner with smaller companies in the community and provide some corporate strategic funding for a small company to further develop a solution that large company needs. If we had more of that happening in this community and a lot of other places, then that would lessen the blow of a federal initiative like this.
Carol Ann Logue is director of the UCF Business Incubation Program. Coming up, it is Zora Festival season right now in Eatonville. NY Nathiri joins Engage to share the importance of keeping the celebration going, not just for Eatonville, but for all of Central Florida. This is Engage on Central Florida Public Media. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Zora Neale Hurston is a celebrated, renowned Black writer who elevated African American literature in a segregated era. She was born in Alabama in 1891 and was 3 years old when she moved to Eatonville, this country's oldest incorporated Black municipality established by African Americans. Hurston's influence is evident in generations of Black writers since the Harlem Renaissance and celebrated today in the literary world and in our Central Florida community. It is Zora Festival season in Eatonville, so we asked N.Y. Nathiri, Executive Director of the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community, to join us here on Engage. We talked about what to expect at the 2025 Zora Outdoor Festival this week and the importance of this intersection of arts, culture, and legacy. Nathiri begins this conversation by explaining why the message in this festival is important for all communities in Central Florida.
We are told that if we don't tell our story as individuals, as community, and here I'm speaking broadly, this statement is this comment is about us as human beings. In other words, if we do not tell our stories to each other, to our children, to our neighbors, our story gets lost. Just that's what happens with the span of time. And as we are here in the early decades of the 21st century, challenged with so much information, so much that is buffeting, and how do you say, just trying to compete for our attention. Mm-hmm. The story of Eatonville and of Zora Neale Hurston is of particular impact because it has a global significance. And that really rests with the fact that the literary genius of Zora Neale Hurston has made Eatonville literally a global destination. I'm speaking in this way because of my personal connection and observation of the power of individual genius. I think that so often, I'll speak for myself, genius is something that is very, very special. However, sometimes it's not easy to comprehend the power of that genius, whatever it is, whether it's music, whether it's literature, whether it's science. But over the decades that I have been working with this organization, I have actually observed the power of the genius of Zora Neale Hurston. And that is because she connects with so many people from such various backgrounds that you really understand what that personal power represents. And so, as I talk with you and your listeners about the impact or the import of the Zora Neale Hurston Festival, I'm really coming from that perspective. We would not have the ability to enjoy what we do as the organizers of the Zora Neale Hurston Festival of the Arts and Humanities if it were not for that individual genius. And though each festival is not solely focused on her or her work as the, let's say, as the strong emphasis, nonetheless, she is that anchor, she is that foundation for the goals of the festival, which remain the celebration of her and her work, the celebration of the historic significance of her hometown, which she has made a literary destination, and the celebration of the cultural contributions which people of African ancestry have made to the United States and to the world.
I think some people might know Zora Neale Hurston as the author of Their Eyes Were Watching God. Can you expand on that? What did she
Yes.
do by breaking these literary norms? What was her work doing?
Zora Neale Hurston is a maverick. You know, she comes out of a time when she was born in 1891, died in 1960. So when she is at her creative strength, she is going against the grain because she is using the vernacular. She is using the dialect of the rural Southern African American at a time when whites and blacks, whites and Negroes, whites and colored people were looking at dialect as being representative of the status of being lower than or less than white society. So you have to, this is a way of understanding what it means to go against the grain. And yet, particularly with her literary masterpiece, Their Eyes Are Watching God, she uses that dialect in such a fine way. When I say fine, I'm speaking way of literary language, being able to use the language in such a way that it is elevated as a way to connect, a way to express. And so the fact, for people who are in the audience who may remember their lessons about Dante and why Dante had such an impact, why he was revolutionary in his writing because he used the vernacular when he wrote when he wrote his classic piece. So in that same way, Zora Neale Hurston went against the mold, and yet the strength of her writing, the beauty of her writing, really elevated that vernacular. So, yes, now she is a part of the canon, of the literary canon. I would say that our experience has certainly been that over the last 3, 4 decades, anyone who has been exposed to post-secondary education, and in fact, even in international baccalaureate studies and advanced applications, advanced studies, AP, they have read Zora Neale Hurston's Eyes Are Watching God. All right. And they've read that book because of what it represents in terms of theme, that is, the effort to discover oneself. That's a universal theme. If you have the time, if you have the ability to do more than just grunt out a living, if you have the time to think about who you are and what you are, aside from the position you may occupy as a wife, a mother, a sister, a relative, or a husband or an individual who is within a certain context in society, all of us at some point, if we have that ability, we grapple with that need to discover and be at peace with ourselves. And so, Zora Neale Hurston, in Their Eyes Are Watching God, she really looks at that. She looks at that from the point of view of a woman who has certain status, but who is actually an illiterate. At one point she says in Their Eyes Were Watching God, if Janie Crawford had an education, if she knew, she would have a better sense of what it was that she was experiencing. But what she experiences is a kind of classic journey into self-discovery.
We are in Zora Festival season, but we also have this year's Outdoor Festival of the Arts coming up at the end of January. I would love to know who you would like to see attend this festival and what they could expect.
So now I am just going to I'm going to wax as eloquently as I can, because anyone who has the ability to impact a child, pre-K to grade 12, anyone within the sound of my voice, you need to get your child, your young person, if you lead a group, you need to get that young person to the Outdoor Festival of the Arts, because I can say to you without any hesitation, Sharon Stone, that we have an absolutely fantastic set of programs that will take place in Eatonville on Friday, January 31, Saturday, February 1, and Sunday, February 2. And I can speak in this way because of the power of collaboration. It's fantastic, the programming that the Orlando Science Center has been able to curate at the Zora STEM Explorers Zone. We have people who are coming from the fossil hunters. We have the neurosurgeons. We have the rockets. I mean, it's really quite something. In addition to the Zeta Phi Beta sorority, Make and Take Tent, and the eSTEAM Learning Center, the Florida Historical Society. That's just one side. Then Orange County Public Schools is curating student art in the town council chambers of the Eatonville Town Council, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and on the main stage on Friday, students from Orange County Public Schools will be the performers. Now, that's just on Friday. On Saturday, it's a wonderful time to be a kid in the state of Florida. And we are just doing everything that we can to urge people to come. And the wonderful thing about this is that children pay no cost. There's no admission. It's a part of our commitment to educational excellence. And the other very fine thing is that on Friday Education Day, adults pay no cost. And so the ideal day for everyone who is listening, who are adults, who may, really have to budget very carefully with their pennies, or who, they have a certain financial situation, but I don't think you can beat free. Okay.
If it's free, it's for me.
Yes, exactly. I don't think an adult can beat free. Now, of course, on Saturday and Sunday, We have everything remains the same in terms of the international marketplace and the museum exhibition that will be featuring Jerisha Graham, an Atlanta-based artist who is doing a printmaker. We're so happy and pleased to be able to present her work because it's not often that we get a chance to do that medium. And so that will be a very fine. Of course, I've mentioned the Florida Historical Society, who is an anchor as a partner in terms of bringing exhibitions that relate to engage the people. So much of the education programming that we do, we call it edutainment because we're really being kind of subversive. We're trying to get in as much information, authentic information that is without reproach because it is factually accurate.
N.Y. Nathiri is Executive Director of the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community. That's all for today's edition of Engage. We're back Thursday at 3 o'clock. If you missed any part of the show today, you can always subscribe to the Engage podcast and listen whenever it's convenient for you. All of our programs will be available on demand at cfpublic.org. And hey, we want to engage with you. Let us know what you would like to hear more about, what you're glad you heard. Send us an email to engage@cfpublic.org with your feedback. That would be appreciated. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sharon Stone. All Things Considered with Nicole Darden-Creston is coming up following NPR News.